Hey everyone, it's Nikki, and welcome back to another installment in Sonic Month, this kind of sub-series that I'm doing within my Furry Reviews series for the month of June. Today I'm going to be talking about Sonic X. Sonic X is an anime that was created by TMS Entertainment in association with Sega and Sonic Team. It was directed by Hajime Kamagaki and was written by Hiro Masaki in Season 1 and 2, and Kyoko Yoshimura in Season 3. It is a 2D animated series, and it was first released April 6, 2003. So Season 1 and 2 of this anime are adaptations of a variety of Sonic games, primarily Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic Battle, while the third season is its own original story created for the show. So before I started talking about the technical elements of this series, I first wanted to talk about my favorite parts. Now, this is one of the longest shows I've ever reviewed on this channel, so it was really hard for me to pare down all the little moments and episodes and stuff that I liked, but here is the pared down list from a very, very, very long series of moments that I enjoyed. I also want to mention that I watched the Japanese version of this show instead of the 4Kids American version of the show. So what I'm talking about might be a little bit different to how it was presented in the American show, because the American show changed a lot of lines and censored a lot of stuff. So keep that in mind as I talk about certain things happening in episodes. So I first wanted to mention that I just really liked Eggman's badniks throughout the series, including Boko and Deco, who are these kind of little minion robots that appear in basically all the episodes he appears in. Bokkun, who's this little messenger robot that is also in a lot of episodes. E51 teacher robot, he features in a pretty early episode, but I just thought he was really funny. And E77 Lucky, who is this lucky robot, as his name would suggest. Luck is his superpower. He's very cute. And yeah, so I just really like the robots in this series. I also thought there were some funny and random references to popular culture. Like there's a scene in episode 13 where Knuckles makes like a Doctor Strangelove reference. He's like riding the bomb kind of situation. And there's another episode where Tanaka and Chris kind of cosplay as the Green Hornet and Kato. So yeah, there was just like little moments like that throughout the series that you're like, this is not intended for kids. I don't think kids would get this, so. Yeah, interesting stuff. Then there's Rouge and Topaz. Topaz is this gun agent that appears in a few episodes in the show. There's their relationship. They're kind of gal pals, if you know what I'm saying. Then there's Eggman's kind of transformation as the series goes on from like an actual bad villain that everybody is trying to stop to almost this Team Rocket-like figure, especially with Boko and Deco as kind of like the peanut gallery who are commenting on his schemes. It's just a really pleasant kind of change of pace that reminds me of his relationship to the cast in Sonic Boom, which obviously this show came out way before that, but that kind of camaraderie, friendly enemy type dynamic gets greater as the show goes on. Although he's still more of a villain, I would say, than Eggman is in the Sonic Boom cartoon. Then there's all of episode 14, which focuses on a friend of one of the human characters. Her name is Helen, and she is in a wheelchair, and it's just a nice episode with her and Sonic interacting, and she kind of talks about how her parents are constantly worrying over her because she's disabled, and she feels guilty that they are always worrying about her and they're working hard so they can afford stuff like her wheelchair. So it's just a really interesting insight in both what it like the parents' perspective of raising a disabled child and then how that child feels about his or her life. And I just thought it was a really sweet episode. Then there's the like Japanese propaganda of episode 22. They go to Tanaka's homeland. They never call it Japan, but it's very obviously Japan. And it's just everything is beautiful. Chow lived there apparently, which was really weird in terms of world building. I'm like, wait, Chow just exists on this planet? Okay. Throughout the show, there are several different chaotic detective agency focused episodes, but the first one is by far my favorite. It's just so funny. First introduction to SBO Charmy and Vector, and they're just these like lovable, ineffective private detectives, and it was just a really fun episode. Then there's the utter insanity of the Eggman Eclipse art. So if you aren't familiar with Sonic X or Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, Eggman just like blows up the moon. He like blows up half of it, and it's just like that. So he repairs half of the moon in the show. I don't think this happens in the games, but he repairs it with like this metal dome, but then he's able to control the moon, and he basically puts the world in this like permanent solar eclipse. Or is that a solar eclipse? No, that's a lunar eclipse. No, that is a solar eclipse. I know what I'm talking about. And it's like charging people. And just, it's insane. It's like, who comes up with this? Only Eggman could come up with this, or I guess, in this case, the writers of this show. But it was just, I loved every minute of it. It was absolutely absurd. For the first several episodes, while Sonic and his friends are on Earth, they're trying to kind of like live undetected by humans. But eventually their ruse is revealed when Cream kind of just exposes herself to all the people in the Thorndike household. So they eventually know that there are these humanoid animal creatures living on Earth. And in a later episode, as like acknowledgement of their existence and all that they've been doing to help save the Earth, they all get like passports and social security cards. And I don't know why that was just so funny to me. And then there's Tails trying to get like a driver's license. And oh, I think Tails does get a pilot's license because he's been just flying the tornado around without a license. And then there's the episode where Knuckles goes to China. Oh, I'm sorry, Oriental City. It's an interesting little tale as he's trying to find the Chaos Emeralds. It's a Knuckles-focused episode. Knuckles is my son, so I love anything to do with Knuckles. Speaking of Knuckles, the whole like first season and just basically Knuckles' entire like premise in the show is like protect the Master Emerald, protect the Chaos Emeralds, that kind of stuff. And once Angel Island, so like basically Mobius and Earth, they kind of start morphing into one. So like Angel Island just like appears on Earth, and with it the Chaos, or the Master Emerald. And literally Knuckles just immediately fails his one job at protecting the Master Emerald, and it ends up getting shattered in pieces. It's like, good job, Knuckles. You literally had one task and you just immediately failed at it. Bravo. There's a scene where the police have mistaken Sonic to be a perpetrator of a series of jewel heists, which it's later revealed to be Shadow. And I believe this is an allusion to the video games. There's a scene where he's flying in like, I think he's flying out of a helicopter or maybe one of those little like military planes. But he jumps out of the plane and he has this like skateboard, or no, like a snowboard type apparatus strapped to his feet, and he rides down like the hill with that. And I just thought that was so funny. I didn't realize it was referencing something that actually happened in the game, so I'm just like watching it like, what the hell is this child doing? Speaking of Shadow, everything about his first appearance is marvelous. His fight with Sonic, and they're just kind of both verbal and physical like beat down of each other as Sonic is trying to assess who this guy is. My favorite part is just Shadow says adios to Sonic. I don't know why that stuck out as like a farewell to me. Like, wow, we stand a multilingual king, I guess. But yeah, adios, Sonic. That scene with Shadow kind of marked the first time that Eggman had launched a successful scheme to attack Sonic. So when Shadow returns to the little Eggman HQ, he celebrates, and it's a very funny and cute scene. So one of the locations that's very pertinent to Shadow's story arc in this series is an island called Prison Island, which is where Shadow and Gerald Robotnik were like working / locked up. And various like far away aerial shots of Prison Island reveal that it is inexplicably shaped like a guitar. There's no reason or explanation, it just looks like a guitar, because I guess that's the best formation to house inmates in. Speaking of weirdly shaped objects, the Eclipse Cannon, oh my god, the Eclipse Cannon is what Eggman uses to blow up the moon. It's shaped like him with his, it's like a Death Star kind of thing, but it has his eyes, his little nose, which is the cannon, and then his mustache. It's the funniest looking thing ever. In order to stop the mess that he created, of course, Eggman tells Shadow and Sonic that they need to go like Super Sonic and Super Shadow in order to stop this colony that was in the air, which is the kind of the Eclipse Cannon thing, from hurtling towards Earth. Everyone, of course, is cheering on Sonic as he's in the middle of saving the world, but Eggman also cheers on Shadow, which I just thought was like a really heartfelt and like meaningful moment. Like, oh, Eggman actually does, to a certain extent, care about Shadow. And like Shadow has people who love him and cheer him on as he does good things. So maybe to tear up a little bit. So after the whole space colony arc thing, and then moving on to the aforementioned insane solar eclipse arc, there's a scene where Knuckles, in order to like kind of stop Robotnik's contraption, just punches the moon. So Sonic becomes pretty popular in the universe of this series. Everyone knows him for being the hero that is saving them from the evil Dr. Robotnik / Dr. Eggman. And there's one scene where everybody, like Sonic inadvertently causes like mass chaos because everybody just stops what they're doing and kind of quits their jobs. It is just they're all relaxing in his like iconic like arms up, reclining pose, and it was just the weirdest thing in the world, but I enjoyed it immensely. Like most shonen anime, there is an inexplicable tournament arc, although it is very short in this show, thankfully, and it actually makes it good, and there's like an actual explanation in the show. But there's a tournament arc, and Knuckles is initially hesitant to do it. He doesn't want to. He doesn't really care about it, but everyone basically peer pressures him into joining this tournament, and he, along with several other characters, released these like advertisements for their like campaigns or these commercials, and his is just so funny. It's just literally the best commercial I've ever seen in my life. Speaking of the tournament, for one of the rounds, Rouge is paired with Tails, and you know, they're putting up a pretty good fight, but then Rouge decides to fight a little dirty, and she ends up winning the fight by kissing Tails on the cheek and proceeding to knock him out while he's dazed. In another episode involving like Gun and Rouge as well as Knuckles, Rouge is kind of going about a facility. She's like sneaking through the air vents and all this stuff, and Knuckles just punches through a wall to get where he wants to go. Complete opposite of stealth. I like basically any moments between Rouge and Knuckles. I just think that they're a really good both comedic pair, but also just like they have a lot of chemistry with each other. So now we're getting into new territory. This is in season 3. In season 3, there is this alien race that is trying to take over the galaxy, and Sonic is in a battle with one of them, and in order to protect the Chaos Emeralds from getting into the hands of these aliens, he spreads them throughout the galaxy. That's not what I like. What I like was when he's kind of telling this to everybody back on Mobius, and he's like, yo, there's this like alien species that's trying to take over the galaxy. Knuckles' reaction is like, oh, well, why don't you go supersonic? And then Sonic tells him what he did with the Chaos Emeralds. And his reaction is priceless. Just hearing that, oh, I just like spread them throughout the entire galaxy and we have to go find them now. And Knuckles just so pissed. And then there's also the fact that Chris and Tails devise of this weapon called the Sonic Driver, which they shoot Sonic out of. But when they first devise this thing, they don't think of a way to retrieve him from the vacuum of space. Luckily, they figure it out. So because we have to have all of the cast members from the previous seasons in this show, even though they have no relevance to the plot, Rouge is here, and Rouge gets on the space action by sneaking aboard Eggman's vessel, and she's taking a bath. But because this is a kid's show, she's taking a bath fully clothed, and it just cracked me up. Speaking of Eggman, Eggman eventually finds Rouge on his ship, but it is then revealed in this episode that Shadow, who was thought to have died in the whole space colony arc thing, is actually still alive, but barely breathing. And this scene was like heartwarming to me because he's not even mad at Rouge for hightailing on his ship, and he's only worried about Shadow and Shadow's well-being. So yes, he definitely uses Shadow throughout the series, but he seems to actually care for him a lot as well. And then there's Shadow. Shadow is eventually revived from his coma, although he has amnesia. And he basically spends the rest of season 3 just constantly saving the day, showing up and fixing everything that Sonic and or Eggman and or the evil alien Metarex people have screwed up. And, you know, he's great. MVP of the whole series, honestly. In one of the final battles of the series, Shadow makes a triumphant return with the Chaotix of all people. They're here too, of course. Why not? And last but not least, this takes place in the very last episode. I haven't talked about Chris and the Thorndikes because, well, you'll figure out why later, but there is one genuinely heartwarming moment with him at the very end of the season when he is returning home from Mobius and like basically kind of a one-way ticket, and Bulkun, who's the little messenger robot, actually pleads for him to stay. He doesn't want him to go home, and he's like crying because he's a little child. And I don't know, that scene was like, you're all right, Chris. I don't like you, and I don't want you in this season, but you're here, and you're all right. And now on to the technical elements of this series, which include the storytelling and writing, the art style and character design, the setting and world building, the performances, and the music. Storytelling and writing. I think that the writing overall in this series is pretty good. There isn't a lot of filler despite the length of the series, which is pretty surprising for a kid's anime, especially from this point in time. The presence of certain human characters throughout the series, particularly the first 2 seasons, was a bit annoying though. I could live with Chris as the audience surrogate character. He was kind of but you know, I could deal with him. But some of the other background characters like Mr. and Mrs. Thorndike and their employees Ella and Tanaka, Grandpa Thorndike's alright. I can live. Grandpa Thorndike were tight, but the other ones, no. I feel like they had cut back on certain human characters, like the ones I was just mentioning, and gave more screen time, not only to the Mobians, but to the human characters who were actually interesting, like Topaz and Mr. Stewart, which I didn't mention him at all, but he's Chris's teacher who's like a gun spy, and he has some moments throughout the show that are important. That said, I found the first 2 seasons as an adaptation of some of the Sonic games, as well as the 3rd season as its own original story to be quite interesting. The first 2 seasons, given that they are literally adaptations of various Sonic games, felt really in line with what I've come to kind of expect of the Sonic franchise. It just really feels like this is Sonic, you know? Sonic and friends fight against Eggman using the Chaos Emeralds and meet some interesting friends and foes along the way. Boom. That's what Sonic is. 3rd season kind of veers almost into more Star Wars-like territory, which I don't think has been done in any of the games or any other media in the Sonic franchise, so it gets points for originality at least. And I also liked the various alien species and cultures that we kind of explore throughout the 3rd season. There are the, like, I think the Seedrian is like the nickname for the species that Cosmo, who's one of the main characters in season 3, is. There's some Marmoline, which are these cute little fortune-telling creatures. Certain characters like Rouge or the Chaotix kind of seem shoehorned into the 3rd season though, just because the audience liked them, particularly the Chaotix. Rouge I can deal with, maybe because I'm biased and I like her. Also, Chris is still there. You know, he's a little bit less annoying because he's got a bit more of a mature mind. He doesn't ruin it for me. Art style and character design. I love the designs of the Mobians in this series, as well as other non-human creatures. Humans aren't that bad either. They seem like a nice adaptation of the modern Sonic designs from a mostly 3D medium of the, like, adventure games to a 2D medium. And like most anime, they are very expressive. Also, like with a lot of anime, the quality of the animation varies greatly throughout the series, episode to episode, and even scene to scene. I'd say that the animation is competent overall, without too many awkward off-model moments, although I will say that the 3D animation they used for Sonic Spin Dash, which he does in basically every episode, looks terrible. I absolutely hate it, and it's in almost every freaking episode, and it just looks bad. It's like, why couldn't you just have some 2D stock footage? I would prefer that to this terrible CGI monstrosity. Setting and world building. I feel like the anime does a pretty decent job at distilling a lot of information about Mobius, about Earth, about all the other planets we see in season 3 into a digestible series of episodes that aren't like too bogged down with exposition. It feels like sometimes the writers would just throw in random shit whenever there needed to be a place to up the stakes or the heroes of the show needed to magically escape from whatever predicament they were in. I feel like this was most prevalent in the 3rd season, although sprinkled a little bit throughout the previous 2 seasons as well. That said, I do like the universe that this show builds, and I'm intrigued by the storytelling possibilities that the universe of particularly the 3rd season open up for Sonic. Performances. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the original Japanese dub of the show instead of the American English one. It took me a little while to get used to the Japanese voice cast of Sonic and Friends. Particularly Sonic, I was just so used to Roger Craig Smith as Sonic after watching Sonic Boom that I'm like, oh, this is just a very different take on the character. So I wasn't really into it at first, but over the course of the series, it definitely grew on me, and I especially liked Eggman, Tails, and Shadow. Also, I thought Sonic's random English expressions were absolutely hilarious, especially when they were not quite pronounced correctly, which was most of the time. Music. I just wanted to say that even though the Japanese version of this anime is better in almost every conceivable way from censorship, storytelling, and sometimes voice acting perspectives, Gotta Go Fast is a vastly superior theme song than the Japanese Sonic Drive. I'm sorry, it is, and I'm not saying that out of nostalgia because I didn't grow up watching the show. There are various leitmotifs that I do like in the Japanese show, however, such as Eggman's theme. He's got this kind of, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just sounds mischievous. It's really nice. And there's also some fun action sequence music throughout the show as well. So before I get into my final thoughts on this series, I wanted to talk about comparisons it might have with other media. I feel like the first 2 seasons of the show were, despite the fact that they are Sonic, they're almost a typical shonen anime. They've got a bunch of different plot arcs, like a lot of shonen anime, including the obligatory tournament arc, like I mentioned. And yeah, it just struck me as like a really like, oh, this is a shonen anime. Whereas the 3rd season, it really did something different, not from like animation in general, but I think from like Sonic media particularly. It almost had like a Star Wars or a Star Trek, interplanetary war sci-fi kind of vibe. Star Trek isn't usually war, but you know what I mean. Like planets and civilizations on one planet trying to fight other people, and then it's trying to take over the galaxy, that kind of thing. So I think Star Wars would be the most apt comparison, but I'm not super familiar with sci-fi of that genre. So my final thoughts on Sonic X are that it is an icon of the 2000s that both weeaboos and edgy gamers alike can appreciate. I think it's held up well. Some of it is certainly very cheesy, but if you like shonen anime or Sonic, it'll probably be right up your alley, and I would give it a shot anyway. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!